The alien ship Star Whisper moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Captain Veltar looked at the scanning screens with tired eyes. His crew had been exploring this empty region for 3 months now. They found nothing but rocks and ice floating in the cold void. Dr. HFY worked at his station, checking readings from their deep sensors. The Zephyrian scientist had spent his whole life looking for signs of other civilizations. So far, they had found none. Their people believed they were alone in this part of the galaxy. The ship's main scanner made a soft beeping sound. HFY looked up from his work. Something big was hiding in the asteroid field ahead. The readings showed metal structures buried, deep inside the floating rocks. "Captain, you need to see this," HFY called out. His voice carried excitement for the first time in weeks. Veltar walked over to the science station. The scanner showed massive objects hidden throughout the asteroid field. They were not natural formations. Someone had built them and placed them there on purpose. "How old are these structures?" Veltar asked. HFY ran more scans. The numbers that came back made him check his equipment twice. "Captain, these readings suggest they are over 500,000 years old. That's impossible. No civilization in our records goes back that far." Deep inside the largest asteroid, something began to wake up. Commander Jake Morrison felt his body coming back to life after centuries of frozen sleep. The cryogenic pod around him made clicking sounds as systems activated. Warning lights flashed red and blue in the darkness. Morrison opened his eyes slowly. His mind felt heavy and confused. The last thing he remembered was entering the sleep chamber aboard the Liberty's Edge. That was supposed to be a short rest before their next mission. But something felt wrong. He pressed the emergency release button. The pod door opened with a hiss of cold air. Morrison stepped out into the ship's corridor. Emergency lighting cast long shadows on the metal walls. The ship felt different. It was too quiet. Morrison walked to the nearest computer terminal. The date display made him stop breathing for a moment. 500,000 years had passed since he went to sleep. Earth's entire civilization could have risen and fallen multiple times in that span. He activated the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Morrison aboard Liberty's Edge. All stations report status immediately." Responses came back slowly from other ships hidden throughout the asteroid field. Captain Lisa Parker answered from the carrier New York's Pride. Engineer Dan Rogers checked in from the shipyard vessel Pittsburgh Forge. Most surprising of all, Admiral Kate Sullivan was still alive aboard the command ship Constitution's Fury. Morrison, "Thank God you're awake," Sullivan's voice crackled through the speakers. "We have a situation. Unknown aliens are scanning our positions. Their technology activated our emergency protocols." Morrison felt his training take over. The Terra Defense Fleet had been Earth's greatest military secret. Humanity had built dozens of powerful warships and hidden them throughout the solar system. Each ship carried the most advanced weapons and technology Earth could produce. But why had they slept so long? Where was Earth? Where were the people they swore to protect? Outside, the Zephyrian ship continued its scans. Dr. HFY detected power signatures coming from inside the asteroids. The readings showed energy levels that seemed impossible for such ancient structures. "Captain, these objects are powering up," HFY reported. Fear crept into his voice. "Whatever is inside there, it's waking up." Veltar ordered his crew to back away from the asteroid field, but it was too late. Massive shapes began emerging from their hiding places. The asteroid split apart like eggs hatching. Underneath were ships unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. The Liberty's Edge revealed itself first. The human. Dreadnought was 3 times larger than the Star Whisper. Its hull gleamed with energy shields and weapon arrays. Behind it, more ships appeared. Carriers, destroyers, factory vessels, and massive battleships uncloaked throughout the field. Morrison stood on his bridge watching the alien vessel retreat. The Zephyrian ship looked primitive compared to human technology. Its hull was made of simple metal alloys. Their weapons appeared to be basic energy beams. "Admiral, we have first contact with an unknown species," Morrison reported to Sullivan. "They appear to be scientific explorers, not military." "Understood, Morrison. Do not engage unless they show hostile intent. We need information about what happened to Earth and humanity." Dr. Kexhai stared at the massive fleet surrounding his ship. The alien vessels moved with perfect coordination. Their technology was clearly far beyond anything his people possessed. These ships could destroy the entire Zephyrian civilization without effort. But the aliens were not attacking. They seemed to be waiting and watching. Kexhai realized this was the greatest discovery in his people's history. They had found proof that other intelligent life existed. The question was whether these ancient beings would be friends or enemies. Morrison activated external communications on all frequencies. It was time to make contact with the galaxy's new inhabitants. Morrison stood before the main communication console on Liberty's Edge. He had spent the last hour learning the alien language through his ship's translation computers. The Zephyrian speech patterns were simple compared to human languages. Unknown. "Vessel, this is Commander Jake Morrison of the Terra Defense Fleet. Please identify yourself and state your intentions in this system." The response came quickly. Dr. Kexhai's voice carried surprise and curiosity. "Terra Defense Fleet. Commander Morrison, I am Dr. Kexhai of the Zephyrian Exploration Service. We are peaceful scientists conducting archaeological surveys. We had no knowledge that this region was inhabited." Morrison looked at his tactical display. More human ships were coming online throughout the solar system. The Oregon's Thunder decloaked near Jupiter. Florida's Lightning emerged from Saturn's rings. The massive factory ship Detroit's Hammer rose from the asteroid belt like a sleeping giant. Each ship reported the same story. Their crews had been in cryogenic sleep for exactly 500,127 years. Their automated systems had maintained the vessels in perfect condition, but humanity itself had vanished without explanation. Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the fleet command. "Channel. All ships maintain defensive positions, but do not target the alien vessel. Morrison, you have point on first contact protocols." Morrison opened a direct channel to the Zephyrian ship. "Dr. Kexhai, we would like to arrange a meeting between our peoples. However, we must inform you that we have been asleep for 500,000 years. We have no current knowledge of galactic politics or territorial claims." On the Star Whisper, Captain Veltar listened to the conversation with growing amazement. These humans had been sleeping since before Zephyrian civilization existed. Their technology was so advanced that it could sustain entire fleets across geological time periods. "Dr. Kexhai, ask them about their homeworld," Veltar whispered. "If they've been asleep this long, they may not know what happened to their planet." Kexhai carefully posed the question. "Commander Morrison, our records show a planet in this system that was once inhabited by an advanced civilization. Do you know the current status of Earth?" Morrison felt his heart sink. The way the alien phrased the question told him everything. "Dr. Kexhai, Please transmit current data about the third planet in this system. The information that came back shocked Morrison. Earth was green and beautiful, but covered with Zephyrian cities. The planet showed no signs of human civilization, except for some very old ruins buried underground. Morrison immediately called Admiral Sullivan. "Admiral, Earth has been colonized by the Zephyrians. There's no sign of human presence on the surface." Sullivan's response was calm but firm. "Understood, Morrison. All ships maintain alert status. We need to determine what happened to our people before we make any decisions about these aliens." Meanwhile, aboard the Detroit's Hammer, Chief Engineer Amy Davis was bringing the massive factory ship to full operational status. The vessel was designed to build entire fleets from raw materials. Its construction bays could produce everything from fighters to battleships. "Admiral, Detroit's Hammer reporting full manufacturing capability," Davis announced. "All industrial systems are functioning at 100% efficiency. We can begin fleet expansion immediately if needed." The implications were staggering. The human fleet wasn't just a military force. It was an entire civilization's industrial base, capable of rebuilding humanity from scratch if necessary. Dr. HFY studied the scan results from the human ships. Their technology operated on principles his people barely understood. The vessels seemed to manipulate space and time itself. Their power sources generated more energy than entire Zephyrian cities. "Captain, these beings possess technology that could reshape our understanding of physics," HFY reported. "Their ships appear to have quantum displacement drives and reality manipulation systems. They could travel across the galaxy in days rather than years." Captain Veltar realized his people were facing beings that could easily conquer their entire civilization. Yet the humans seemed more interested in learning than fighting. "Dr. HFY, propose a peaceful meeting. We need to understand their intentions." Morrison received the meeting request and discussed it with Admiral Sullivan. After much consideration, they agreed to allow one Zephyrian scientist aboard Liberty's Edge. 2 hours later, Dr. HFY stood in the Liberty's Edge transporter room. The human technology had simply moved him from his ship to theirs without any visible means of transport. He found himself facing Commander Morrison in a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. "Welcome aboard, Dr. HFY," Morrison said. "I hope this meeting will benefit both our peoples." HFY looked around in wonder. The human ship was vast beyond imagination. Corridors stretched in all directions. The walls seemed to be made of some material that absorbed light and sound. Everything felt solid and permanent. "Commander Morrison, may I ask how many beings live aboard this vessel?" Morrison's answer surprised him. "Currently, only 250 humans are awake, but this ship was designed to carry 50,000 people. Most of our population is still in cryogenic storage." The scale was overwhelming. If each human ship carried similar numbers, their fleet represented millions of sleeping humans. An entire civilization waiting to be awakened. Morrison led HFY to the ship's conference room. There, holographic displays showed the current state of human space. Red dots marked the locations of sleeping fleet units. Green dots showed active ships. The pattern covered the entire solar system. "Dr. HFY, we built this fleet to protect humanity from a great threat. Our records indicate that danger was supposed to arrive approximately 500,000 years ago. We need to understand what happened during our sleep." HFY realized he was looking at the greatest military force ever assembled. These humans had prepared for a war that apparently never came. Now they were awake and looking for answers in a galaxy that had moved on without them. 3 days after first contact, a joint expedition departed for Earth. Commander Morrison piloted a human shuttle alongside the Zephyrian science vessel. Dr. HFY sat in the co-pilot seat, studying human navigation displays that showed space, in ways his people had never imagined. The shuttle's quantum drive covered the distance to Earth in minutes rather than hours. Captain Ross Turner and Navigation Officer Beth Collins monitored the approach from Liberty's Edge, ensuring safe passage through the inner system. As Earth grew larger on their screens, Morrison felt emotions he had buried for centuries. The blue and green planet looked exactly as he remembered, but the cities below were alien structures his people had never built. The ruins of your civilization lie approximately 50 meters below our newest settlements, Dr. HFY explained. We discovered them during our colonization efforts 3,000 years ago. We preserved what we could find. Morrison activated his scanning equipment. Deep underground, the sensors detected massive structures. Human cities stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the Zephyrian colonies. The buried civilization was far larger than anything on the surface. They landed at the main archaeological site near what had once been New York City. Dr. HFY led Morrison through Zephyrian excavation tunnels that descended into the human ruins below. The preserved human city was breathtaking. Massive towers reached upward toward the surface. Transportation tunnels connected buildings in all directions. Everything was made from materials that showed no signs of decay after 500,000 years. Your people built cities designed to last forever, HFY observed. Yet they abandoned everything suddenly. We found no bodies, no signs of struggle or disaster. They simply vanished. Morrison examined the human computer terminals that still functioned after centuries. His authorization codes still worked. The city's central database contained the final records of human civilization. Major Steve Jackson joined them through a matter transporter. The human archaeologist had been awakened specifically to help understand these ruins. Jackson immediately began accessing the historical archives. Commander, I'm finding records from the final years before the Great Sleep, Jackson reported. Humanity achieved something called technological transcendence. They had a choice to make. The records painted a picture of humanity at its peak. They had mastered space, time, energy, and matter itself. Human scientists could create new universes or travel to distant galaxies instantly. Death had become optional. Aging was a thing of the past. But humanity faced a terrible decision. Deep space sensors had detected an approaching threat called the Devourers. These entities consumed entire galaxies, reducing organized matter back to primordial chaos. They existed partially outside normal reality, making them nearly impossible to fight. The records show that most humans chose transcendence, Jackson continued reading. They evolved beyond physical existence to escape the Devourers. But volunteers remained behind to guard the galaxy. Morrison felt the weight of understanding settle on him. The Terra Defense Fleet wasn't just hiding from enemies. They were the guardians left behind by a transcended humanity. Their job was to protect any civilizations that emerged after the Devourers passed. Dr. HFY studied the human records with growing concern. Commander Morrison, these Devourers you mention, do your records indicate when they were supposed to arrive? Jackson checked the timeline calculations. His face went pale as he read the results. According to the predictions, the Devourers should be entering our galaxy right now. Back on Liberty's Edge, Admiral Sullivan received Morrison's report with grim determination. She immediately activated fleet-wide communication systems to address all awakening human ships. All vessels, This is Admiral Sullivan with Priority. Briefing. We have confirmed the reason for our long sleep. The Devourer entities are approaching our galaxy as predicted. Our mission remains unchanged. We are the guardians of this galactic region. Throughout the solar system, human ships began full activation sequences. The massive carrier New York's Pride launched thousands of fighter craft. Factory ships started producing weapons and equipment at maximum speed. Battle stations that had waited 500,000 years suddenly came to life. Flight engineer Gary Mitchell and communications officer Nancy Webb worked together to decode ancient warning beacons left by transcended humans. The signals contained updated information about Devourer movement patterns and attack strategies. Admiral, the transcended humans left us detailed battle plans, Webb reported. They predicted multiple Devourer approach vectors and prepared countermeasures for each scenario. The scope of human preparation was staggering. Earth's children had spent decades preparing for a war across space and time itself. Every possible scenario had been considered and planned for. Morrison returned to the surface with Dr. HFY. The Zephyrian scientist was struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what they had discovered. His peaceful people had never imagined threats on such a scale. Dr. HFY, we need to discuss this situation with your government, Morrison said carefully. The Devourers will consume your civilization along with everything else in this galaxy. We can protect you, but only if we work together. HFY activated his communication device to contact the Zephyrian High Council. The conversation that followed would change his people forever. Prime Minister Zolren listened to the report from Earth with disbelief. The idea that ancient beings had left guardians to protect future civilizations seemed like myth rather than reality. But the evidence was overwhelming. Dr. HFY, are you certain these humans can protect us from this threat? Zolren asked. Prime Minister, their technology is beyond our understanding. A single human ship could probably defeat our entire space fleet. But they're not conquerors. They're guardians who have been waiting to fulfill their duty. Morrison established direct communication with the Zephyrian government. Prime Minister Zolren, humanity offers alliance and protection to your people. In exchange, we ask for your help in preparing this galaxy's defenses. The Devourers are coming, and we'll need every advantage we can get. The decision would determine the fate of both civilizations. 2 weeks after the alliance was formed, the first reports arrived from the galaxy's outer rim. Entire star systems were going dark without warning. The monitoring stations that detected these disappearances found something worse than simple destruction. The stars weren't exploding or dying naturally. They were being consumed, reduced to empty space where nothing had ever existed. Prime Minister Zolren stood in the Zephyrian Command Center, watching holographic displays that showed the approaching threat. Red zones marked areas where the Devourers had already struck. The pattern of consumption was moving steadily toward the intergalactic regions. Admiral Sullivan, our deep space sensors confirm your worst predictions, Zolren reported through the communication link. The entities are consuming approximately 1 star system per day. At this rate, they will reach Zephyrian space in less than 2 years. Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical displays aboard Constitution's Fury. The human command ship's advanced sensors provided much more detailed information about the approaching threat. What they revealed was terrifying. Prime Minister, the Devourers aren't just destroying matter, Sullivan explained. They're unmaking reality itself. Where they pass, space-time returns to its original chaotic state. Nothing that enters those zones can exist in any organized form. Commander Morrison worked with Zephyrian engineers to upgrade their technology. The peaceful aliens were brilliant scientists, but they had never designed weapons of war. Their entire civilization was built around exploration and discovery, not survival combat. Pilot instructor Frank Hughes and tactical officer Carol Peterson led training sessions for Zephyrian volunteers. The aliens learned quickly, but adapting to combat thinking required fundamental changes in their worldview. The key to fighting devourers is understanding that normal physics don't apply, Peterson explained to a group of Zephyrian pilots. These entities exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Your weapons must target their anchor points in our reality. The human ships possessed weapons specifically designed for reality-warping combat. Quantum torpedoes could track targets across multiple dimensions. Probability cannons fired shots that existed in several potential states until they struck their targets. Reality anchors prevented local space-time from being unmade during battle. Engineering Chief Ray Barnes and systems analyst Linda Foster worked around the clock to upgrade Zephyrian vessels. The alien ships were primitive by human standards, but they could be modified to carry reality-anchoring technology. The Zephyrian hulls are actually better suited for anchor systems than our own ships, Foster reported to Admiral Sullivan. Their crystalline construction naturally resonates with space-time frequencies. With human technology installed, they could become our most effective anchor platforms. The factory ship Detroit's Hammer became the center of a massive construction project. Chief Engineer Amy Davis supervised the production of hybrid vessels that combined human weapons with Zephyrian hulls. The new ships were specifically designed to fight enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. Dr. Kexhai spent his time studying human records about previous devourer encounters. The transcended humans had faced these entities before, in other galaxies. The battles had lasted centuries and consumed entire civilizations. Commander Morrison, your people's records indicate that the devourers are not truly alive in any sense we understand, Kexhai reported. They appear to be fragments of the original chaos that existed before the universe organized itself into matter and energy. Morrison found the concept disturbing, but not surprising. Humanity had always known that their greatest enemies would be forces that denied existence itself. The Terra Defense Fleet had been built to fight wars against impossibility. Captain Henry Moore and intelligence officer Ruth Garcia coordinated information gathering from across the galaxy. Human sensor networks that had been dormant for millennia suddenly activated to track devourer movements. The reports painted a picture of systematic consumption. The devourers moved in coordinated groups, surrounding star systems before beginning the unmaking process. They showed intelligence and planning despite being entities of pure chaos. Admiral, we're detecting devourer scout formations approximately 6 months out from the nearest inhabited systems, Garcia reported. They appear to be mapping galactic defensive positions before beginning their main assault. Admiral Sullivan made the decision to engage the scouts before they could report back to the main devourer force. It would be humanity's first combat action in over 500,000 years. The human battleship Texas Ranger, commanded by Captain Lisa Parker, led a strike force to intercept the scouts. The ship's reality anchor systems had been upgraded with Zephyrian crystalline technology, making it one of the most powerful vessels in the combined fleet. The battle took place in empty space between star systems. The Devourer scouts appeared as tears in reality itself, dark shapes that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space-time like sharks through water, leaving trails of unmaking behind them. Parker's tactical team fired quantum torpedoes that tracked the entities across multiple dimensions. The weapons struck their targets, but the Devourers simply absorbed the energy and continued advancing. All ships switched to reality anchor bombardment, Parker ordered. Target their dimensional anchor points, not their physical manifestations. The human ships opened fire with weapons that most civilizations couldn't even comprehend. Reality anchors locked local spacetime into stable configurations. Probability cannons fired shots that existed in quantum superposition until they encountered their targets. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Devourer scouts had been destroyed, but the cost was significant. 2 human ships had been partially unmade before their reality anchors could stabilize local spacetime. Parker returned to the main fleet with valuable combat data. The Devourers were exactly as dangerous as the ancient records suggested, but they could be fought with the right technology and tactics. "Admiral, the scouts were more powerful than our projections indicated," Parker reported. "The main Devourer force will require our full strength and perfect coordination with the Zephyrian fleet." Admiral Sullivan began planning for the largest battle in galactic history. The combined human-Zephyrian fleet would make their stand at the edge of inhabited space. If they failed, entire civilizations would be consumed by chaos itself. The combined fleet assembled at Rally Point Alpha, a position carefully chosen at the edge of inhabited galactic space. Over 300 human vessels formed the core of the defense force, while nearly 1,000 upgraded Zephyrian ships provided support and anchor platforms. Commander Morrison stood on the bridge of Liberty's Edge, watching the largest military formation in galactic history take shape. The human dreadnoughts formed defensive lines, while Zephyrian science vessels, now equipped with reality anchor technology, created a protective grid around the combat ships. Captain Yelnara had been chosen to lead the Zephyrian forces. She was young for a ship commander, but her analytical mind had quickly grasped the complex mathematics required to fight beings that existed across multiple dimensions. "Commander Morrison, our anchor grid is achieving 67% stability," Yelnara reported. "The human technology is working better than we hoped with our crystalline hulls." Morrison nodded approvingly. The Zephyrians had surprised everyone with their adaptability. Their peaceful culture had been forced to embrace warfare, but they approached it with the same scientific precision they applied to exploration. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the overall defense from Constitution's Fury. The command ship's Quantum, computers processed battle plans that required calculations across 11 dimensions of space-time. Human artificial intelligences worked alongside Zephyrian analytical engines to create tactical solutions no single species could achieve alone. "All stations, we have confirmed Devourer approach," Sullivan announced fleet-wide. "Main force contact in 72 hours. All ships implement final preparation protocols." The factory ships worked at maximum capacity to produce ammunition and replacement parts. Production Manager Ken Wright and Quality Control Officer Patricia Lopez supervised the creation of quantum torpedoes and reality anchor charges. Every minute of preparation could mean the difference between victory and total consumption. Dr. Kexhai had established a research station aboard the human carrier New York's Pride. Working with human scientists, he studied the scout battle recordings to understand Devourer behavior patterns. The entities show coordinated intelligence despite being creatures of chaos, Kexhai reported to the Joint Command Staff. They adapt their tactics based on our defensive measures. This suggests some form of collective consciousness. The implications were disturbing. Fighting an intelligent enemy was difficult enough. fighting beings that could learn and adapt while existing partially outside reality itself, presented challenges that pushed both human and Zephyrian capabilities to their limits. Engineer Dan Rogers worked with Zephyrian technical teams to modify their anchor systems for maximum effectiveness. The crystalline technology that the aliens used in their ship hulls had unexpected properties when combined with human quantum field generators. Admiral, we've discovered that Zephyrian crystal matrices can actually strengthen our reality anchors, Rogers reported. The combined systems create stable space-time zones that are much harder for devourers to unmake. This discovery led to rapid modifications of the entire fleet. Human ships received Zephyrian crystal upgrades, while alien vessels got human quantum generators. The hybrid technology was more powerful than either species could create alone. Flight engineer Gary Mitchell coordinated the deployment of early warning sensor networks. Human technology could detect devourer approach signatures across vast distances, but the entities had learned to mask their presence during their advance across the galaxy. "We're getting intermittent contacts at the edge of sensor range," Mitchell reported. "The devourers are using some kind of dimensional phasing to avoid detection. They're definitely planning a coordinated assault." Communications Officer Nancy Webb established secure channels between all fleet elements. The battle would require split-second coordination across hundreds of ships. Any breakdown in communication could lead to catastrophic anchor failure and local reality collapse. The Zephyrian High Council had relocated to the fleet's mobile command center. Prime Minister Zolrin and his advisors watched the preparations with a mixture of awe and terror. Their peaceful civilization was about to face the ultimate test of survival. "Admiral Sullivan, our people are ready to fight alongside yours," Zolrin declared. "We understand that failure means not just death, but complete non-existence. Our ships and crews are at your disposal." Sullivan appreciated the Zephyrian commitment, but she also knew the terrible cost of the coming battle. Many ships would be lost. Many beings would sacrifice their existence to preserve reality itself for future generations. Captain Ross Turner and Navigation Officer Beth Collins worked with Zephyrian astrogators to plot escape routes for civilian populations. If the fleet failed, billions of innocent beings would need to evacuate to the galaxy's far regions. The evacuation plans were comprehensive, but desperate. Moving entire civilizations across galactic distances would take decades. Most people would spend their lives aboard refugee ships, never seeing their homeworlds again. Chief Engineer Amy Davis supervised the final preparations aboard Detroit's Hammer. The massive factory ship would continue producing weapons and replacement parts throughout the battle. Its survival was crucial for sustained resistance if the war continued for months or years. "All systems ready for combat production," Davis reported. "We can maintain fleet ammunition supplies indefinitely as long as our anchor systems hold." As the final hours approached, both human and Zephyrian crews made their personal preparations. Many wrote messages to loved ones they might never see again. Others spent time in meditation or prayer, seeking peace before facing chaos itself. Commander Morrison walked through Liberty's Edge, speaking with his crew members. These humans had volunteered to sleep for centuries, waiting for this moment. They understood their duty and were prepared to fulfill it regardless of the cost. "Remember, we're not just fighting for our own survival," Morrison told his tactical team. "We're fighting for the right of organized matter to exist in this universe. Every planet, every civilization, every thinking being depends on our success." The Devourers were coming, and the Alliance would soon face the ultimate test of courage, technology, and determination. The Devourers arrived like a storm of unmaking that consumed light itself. Space-time began to twist and tear as the entities crossed into normal reality. Stars flickered and died in their wake, not from any physical force, but from the simple cessation of existence. Admiral Sullivan watched the tactical displays as reality anchor alarms sounded throughout the fleet. The Devourers approached in a formation that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Counting them was impossible, because they occupied spaces that contradicted each other. "All ships, implement Anchor Protocol 7, Sullivan commanded. "Lock local space-time into maximum stability configuration. Do not allow reality fluctuations near civilian evacuation routes." Commander Morrison felt Liberty's Edge shudder as its reality anchors engaged at full power. The ship's quantum field generators worked with newly installed Zephyrian crystal matrices to create a bubble of stable existence around the vessel. The first wave of Devourers struck the outer sensor network. The monitoring stations simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but unmade at the fundamental level. Where they had been, space itself forgot that anything had ever occupied those coordinates. Captain Yelnara coordinated the Zephyrian anchor ships from her command vessel Starwind. The crystalline hulls of her people's ships resonated with space-time frequencies, creating stability zones that the Devourers found difficult to penetrate. "Human fleet, our anchor grid is holding at 83% efficiency," Yelnara reported. "Zephyrian vessels are performing better than projected in the reality stabilization role." The battle began in earnest as the main Devourer force engaged the Allied fleet. These entities fought unlike any enemy either species had ever faced. They attacked existence itself, trying to reduce organized matter back to primordial chaos. Captain Lisa Parker commanded the heavy assault group from New York's Pride. Her ships opened fire with quantum torpedoes that tracked targets across 11 dimensions. The weapons struck their marks, but the Devourers absorbed the energy and continued their advance. "Switch to reality fracture warheads," Parker ordered. "Target their dimensional anchor points, not their physical manifestations." The human weapons fired projectiles that existed in quantum superposition until they encountered their targets. When the warheads struck Devourer anchor points, the entities screamed across frequencies that had no names. Engineer Dan Rogers monitored the fleet's reality anchor systems from his station aboard Pittsburgh Forge. The crystalline quantum hybrid technology was performing beyond all expectations, but the strain was enormous. "Admiral, anchor matrix efficiency is dropping to 71%, Rogers reported. "The Devourers are learning to counteract our stabilization fields. We need to rotate anchor duties to prevent system burnout." The battle became a complex dance of ships moving in and out of anchor positions. Zephyrian vessels created stability zones while human ships engaged the enemy with reality-warping weapons. Coordination was everything. Dr. Kexhai worked frantically at his analysis station, studying Devourer attack patterns in real time. The entities showed disturbing adaptability, changing their tactics as they learned from each engagement. "Commander Morrison, the Devourers are displaying collective intelligence," Kexhai announced. "They're sharing tactical information across dimensional boundaries. Each destroyed entity teaches the others how to counter our weapons." This revelation changed the entire battle strategy. The Allied fleet couldn't simply overpower the Devourers with superior firepower. They needed to prevent the entities from learning human and Zephyrian capabilities. Flight engineer Gary Mitchell implemented communication blackout protocols. If the Devourers learned by observing, then the Allied forces would have to fight in complete sensor silence between individual ship groups. All vessels, Implement tactical isolation, Mitchell announced. No cross-fleet communications during combat phases. Prevent enemy pattern analysis of our coordination methods. The battle fragmented into dozens of separate engagements. Human and Zephyrian ships fought in small groups, using unpredictable tactics to prevent the Devourers from adapting to their strategies. Captain Ross Turner led a strike force of mixed human-Zephyrian vessels against a Devourer formation that was trying to flank the main fleet. His ships moved through folded space-time, attacking from angles that didn't exist in normal geometry. Target acquired in dimensional space 7 Alpha, Turner reported, engaging with probability cascade. Weapons. The human-Zephyrian hybrid tactics proved effective. By combining human firepower with Zephyrian analytical precision, the strike forces could engage Devourers on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. But the cost was terrible. The destroyer Phoenix's light suffered critical anchor failure and was partially unmade before neighboring ships could stabilize local reality. 47 crew members ceased to exist at the quantum level. Engineering Chief Ray Barnes and Systems Analyst Linda Foster worked desperately to maintain fleet combat effectiveness. Ships damaged by reality warping needed repairs that conventional technology couldn't provide. Admiral, we're losing ships faster than the factory vessels can replace them, Foster reported. The Devourers are focusing on our anchor ships. They understand that destroying our reality stabilizers will allow them to unmake entire fleet sections. Admiral Sullivan made the hardest decision of her career. The fleet would have to sacrifice its defensive positions and engage the Devourers in close combat. It was the only way to prevent the entities from systematically destroying their anchor systems. All ships, implement Protocol Omega, Sullivan announced. Close assault formation. We take the fight directly to them. The Allied fleet charged into the heart of the Devourer formation. Human dreadnoughts fired reality fracture weapons at point blank range while Zephyrian anchor ships created stability corridors through the chaos. Commander Morrison led Liberty's Edge into direct contact with a massive Devourer entity. The creature existed as a tear in space-time itself, surrounded by smaller entities that fed on the chaos it created. All weapons. Target the primary entity's dimensional roots, Morrison ordered. Sever its connection to base reality. The battle reached its climax as both fleets engaged in close combat across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Reality itself became the battlefield, with existence and non-existence locked in mortal struggle. The outcome would determine whether organized matter could continue to exist in this region of the galaxy, or whether everything would return to the primordial chaos from which the universe had first emerged. The close combat phase lasted 18 hours of continuous reality warfare. Ships on both sides phased in and out of existence as their anchor systems strained against forces that denied the fundamental laws of physics. Commander Morrison watched. His tactical display as Liberty's Edge engaged 3 Devourer entities simultaneously. The creatures attacked his ship's reality anchors, trying to unmake the vessel at the quantum level. Anchor systems at 42% efficiency, reported his engineering officer. We can't maintain stability much longer at this level of combat intensity. Throughout the fleet, similar reports came in. The hybrid human-Zephyrian technology was holding, but barely. The Devourers had adapted to most of their tactics and were systematically targeting the anchor ships that kept local reality stable. Admiral, Sullivan studied the overall battle situation from Constitution's Fury. The Allied fleet had destroyed roughly 30% of the Devourer force, but at terrible cost. Over 60 ships had been lost to reality collapse, and anchor efficiency was dropping across all remaining vessels. Captain Yelnara's Zephyrian forces had performed beyond all expectations. The crystalline hulls of their ships provided better reality anchoring than human technology alone could achieve. But even they were reaching their limits. "Admiral Sullivan, our anchor grid is approaching critical failure," Yelnara reported. "If we lose grid cohesion, the Devourers will be able to unmake entire fleet sections simultaneously." Sullivan realized that conventional tactics could not win this battle. The Devourers were too adaptable and too numerous. The Allied fleet needed a completely different approach to prevent total defeat. Dr. HFY had been studying the ancient human records throughout the battle. Deep in the archives, he found references to something called the Transcendence Protocol. It was humanity's ultimate weapon against chaos itself. "Admiral, I've discovered something in your people's historical files," HFY announced over the command channel. "The transcended humans left detailed instructions for a final defensive measure. The Transcendence Protocol was both brilliant and terrible. It would transform living beings into permanent reality anchors, creating eternal guardians who existed partially outside normal space-time. The process was irreversible and required voluntary sacrifice." Sullivan read the protocol details with growing understanding. This was how the original humans had defeated the Devourers in other galaxies. They had sacrificed their physical existence to become living barriers against chaos. "All ship commanders, report to command frequency," Sullivan announced. "I'm transmitting details of a final option. Each crew must vote on participation." The protocol required conscious volunteers who understood the full implications of transcendence. They would become immortal guardians, but they would no longer be truly alive in any biological sense. Commander Morrison gathered his crew in Liberty's, Edge's main assembly hall. 250 humans listened as he explained their options. They could continue fighting with conventional weapons and probably lose, or they could become eternal protectors of galactic civilization. The vote was unanimous. Every human, crew member chose transcendence over defeat. They had spent 500,000 years sleeping, waiting for this moment. They would not fail in their duty now. Captain Yelnara faced a more difficult decision. The Zephyrians had not prepared for such sacrifice. Their peaceful culture had never contemplated voluntary transformation into something beyond physical existence. "My people, we have served alongside the humans with honor," Yelnara addressed her fleet. "Now they offer us the chance to become permanent guardians of this galaxy. The choice is ours to make." To her surprise, over half the Zephyrian crews volunteered for the protocol. Their scientific minds understood that some discoveries required personal sacrifice. They chose to transcend rather than see their civilization consumed by chaos. The Transcendence Protocol began with the largest ships. Admiral Sullivan activated the transformation sequence aboard Constitution's Fury. The massive command vessel began to glow with energy that existed across multiple dimensions. Sullivan felt her consciousness expanding beyond physical limitations. Her mind merged with the ship's quantum computers and reality anchor systems. She became a living extension of the vessel itself, capable of manipulating space-time through pure will. Throughout the fleet, other ships underwent the same transformation. Commander Morrison experienced his consciousness merging with Liberty's Edge's systems. He retained his memories and personality, but gained abilities that transcended biological limitations. The transcended ships became something entirely new. They were no longer just vessels carrying crews. They were sentient beings capable of existing across 11 dimensions simultaneously. Their reality anchor systems transformed into permanent stabilization fields. Captain Yelnara chose transcendence for herself and her ship. The Zephyrian crystalline technology resonated perfectly with the protocol, creating hybrid beings that combined human transcendence capabilities with alien analytical precision. The Devourers found themselves facing enemies they could not understand or counter. The transcended ships existed partially outside reality, making them immune to unmaking attacks. Their anchor fields created zones of absolute stability that chaos could not penetrate. Engineering Chief Amy Davis completed her transformation aboard Detroit's Hammer. The factory ship became a living constructor, capable of creating new transcended vessels from pure energy and will. The fleet's manufacturing capacity became limitless. The transcended beings coordinated their attack with perfect synchronization. They surrounded individual devourer entities with overlapping reality fields, trapping the chaos creatures in pockets of absolute stability. Unable to unmake their enemies or escape the stability zones, the devourers began to weaken. Chaos could not exist in areas where reality was permanently anchored. One by one, the entities dissolved back into the primordial void from which they had emerged. Dr. HFY, who had chosen to remain in physical form, watched the transformation of the battle from his observation post. The transcended ships moved through space like living gods, their reality fields creating islands of absolute order in the chaos. The final devourer entity was the largest and most powerful. It had consumed entire galaxies in the past and existed primarily outside normal space-time. The transcended fleet surrounded it with a reality cage that nothing could penetrate or escape. Admiral Sullivan, now existing as a consciousness, merged with Constitution's fury, addressed the trapped entity directly. You have consumed your last civilization. This galaxy is under our protection now. The great devourer struggled against the reality cage, but could not break free. Slowly, inevitably, it began to dissolve as absolute order overcame primordial chaos. When the battle ended, 37 transcended ships remained as eternal guardians of the galaxy. They had sacrificed their biological existence to ensure that organized matter could continue to exist in this region of space. 6 months after the Great Battle, the galaxy began to heal from the wounds of reality warfare. The transcended ships had taken positions throughout the galactic rim, creating a permanent barrier against future incursions from chaos entities. Dr. HFY stood in his new laboratory aboard the research station Unity-1. The facility had been built jointly by surviving humans and Zephyrians to study the implications of transcendence technology. He was no longer just an archaeologist, but the galaxy's leading expert on transcended civilizations. The transcended beings retain their personalities and memories, HFY recorded in his daily log. Admiral Sullivan still commands the Guardian fleet, though she now exists as a consciousness merged with Constitution's fury. They are immortal protectors who have chosen eternal duty over personal existence. The surviving human population had awakened from their long sleep to find their guardians transformed into something beyond biological life. The reunion was both joyful and tragic. Families were together again, but many loved ones had become transcended beings who could no longer share physical existence. Captain Yelnara, now existing as a hybrid consciousness aboard the transcended Starwind, maintained regular communication with her people. Her analytical mind had adapted perfectly to transcendent existence, making her one of the most effective guardians in the fleet. Dr. HFY, we have detected scout formations from another galaxy approaching our position, Yelnara reported through quantum communication. The battle against chaos is not limited to our region of space. The implications were staggering. The Devourers had been only one manifestation of a universal conflict between order and chaos. Transcended guardians would be needed throughout the cosmos to protect emerging civilizations from forces that denied existence itself. Prime Minister Zolren had established the Galactic Protection Council with representatives from both human and Zephyrian civilizations. Their job was to prepare future generations for threats that conventional military forces could not handle. "The Transcended Guardians have given us a great gift," Zolren announced to the Joint Council. "They have shown us that some duties require ultimate sacrifice. We must ensure that their example inspires rather than intimidates future generations." Commander Morrison, now merged with Liberty's Edge, patrolled the galaxy's outer regions alongside other transcended vessels. His consciousness spanned multiple dimensions, allowing him to detect threats that normal sensors could never perceive. Guardian. "Fleet? We have confirmation of Devourer survivors regrouping in adjacent galactic clusters," Morrison reported to Admiral Sullivan. "The war against chaos continues beyond our local victory. The transcended beings face the reality that their duty would never end. As long as organized matter existed in the universe, forces of chaos would try to reduce it back to primordial void. The Guardians had accepted eternal vigilance as the price of civilization's survival. Engineering Chief Amy Davis, now existing as the consciousness of Detroit's Hammer, worked with surviving human and Zephyrian engineers to develop new transcendence technologies. The factory ship could now create transcended vessels from pure energy, expanding the Guardian fleet as needed. "We have perfected the voluntary transcendence process," Davis reported to the Council. "Any being who chooses Guardian duty can be transformed while retaining their essential personality and memories." The offer of transcendence attracted volunteers from across the galaxy. Scientists, soldiers, and philosophers chose to become eternal protectors. The Guardian fleet grew steadily as new threats were detected in distant regions of space. Dr. Kexhai established the Morrison Institute for Transcendent Studies, named after the commander who had made first contact with his people. The facility trained new Guardians and studied the long-term implications of consciousness existing beyond biological limitations. "Transcendence is not death but transformation," Kexhai explained to a new class of volunteer candidates. "The Guardians retain everything that made them who they were, but gain abilities that allow them to protect reality itself." Flight engineer Gary Mitchell and communications officer Nancy Webb had chosen to remain in biological form to serve as liaisons between the transcended Guardians and normal civilization. Their job was to ensure that the Guardians never lost touch with the people they protected. "The transcended beings still care about individual lives and civilizations," Webb reported to the Council. "They have not become distant gods, but remain connected to the struggles of biological existence." The Zephyrian government implemented new education programs that taught their children about the sacrifices made by both human and Zephyrian Guardians. The story of the Great Battle became a cornerstone of galactic culture. Young Zephyrians learned about Commander Morrison's awakening, the alliance between species, and the ultimate sacrifice of transcendence. The lessons emphasized that some duties transcended species boundaries and personal survival. Captain Ross Turner and Navigation Officer Beth Collins worked with the transcended ships to establish patrol routes throughout the galaxy. The Guardian fleet maintained constant vigilance against chaos incursions while allowing normal civilizations to develop in peace. The transcended vessels became legendary figures in galactic folklore. Children grew up hearing stories about Admiral Sullivan's wisdom, Commander Morrison's courage, and Captain Yelnara's analytical brilliance. As years passed, new civilizations emerged in previously empty regions of the galaxy. Each one was protected by the Guardian fleet that watched over them from hidden positions. The transcended beings revealed themselves only when new threats required their intervention. Dr. Kexhai, now an elderly scientist, made his final entry in the Transcendence research logs. The Guardians have given us the greatest gift possible, the right to exist and grow without fear of cosmic annihilation. Future generations will face their own challenges, but they will do so under the protection of beings who chose eternal duty over personal survival. The galaxy thrived under the protection of its transcended guardians. New species emerged, new technologies developed, and new civilizations reached for the stars. All of this was possible because a group of humans had awakened from their long sleep and chosen to become eternal protectors. In the deepest regions of space, the Guardian fleet maintained its watch. Admiral Sullivan, Commander Morrison, Captain Yelnara, and their transcended crews stood ready to face whatever threats might emerge from the chaos beyond reality. Their sacrifice had ensured that the galaxy would never again face annihilation alone. The legacy of Earth's sleeping war fleet lived on in the immortal Guardians who had chosen duty over existence itself. The story of humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was complete, but the Guardians' watch would continue forever.